tries to wind up for that ultimate, but gets stunned up into the impale.
20% out. Shin Kaigen, he can't do it. It's not enough. He's taken down. Now.
Hello and welcome to this Esports University course on play-by-play casting. My name's Aaron Allen. Online I go by Humanist, and I'm excited to share my knowledge with you here today. For the past 4 years, I've been working in esports. I've been a color caster, a play-by-play caster. I've done desk hosting, analyst work. I've done sideline reporting, interviewing, voiceover specialist type of work. I've even gotten into some social media management and worn many hats through these couple of years that I've been earning a living doing what I love. And honestly, I'm really excited that you've taken the first step to join me, learn these skills, and join this fantastic industry. Over these years, as I've been working in esports, I've been an independent contractor, a freelancer, essentially ready to be hired by anybody that's out there looking for some talent for their esports broadcast. Now, I've been hired by a few different companies to do work, but I've worked hand in hand with multiple large production companies, and I've come to learn a lot of knowledge over that time. What are the expectations of these companies? What's it like to work with this director, this production crew? What's expected when I'm on a desk with one camera versus two cameras, three cameras? Some of these companies I've had the pleasure of working side by side with is ESL, OGN, you may have heard of BTS, ESP Gaming. Definitely works with Twitch a little bit. I was part of the Twitch talent development program through 2016 and 17, which was an awesome opportunity for me. I was able to learn a whole lot, get some guidance, and learn how to boost my skills to the next level. So with all of the work that I've done and the lessons I've learned through my time working in esports, we're gonna go ahead and try and share that with you here now. So how did I find my way into esports work? Well, it's kind of a long story, but the short and dirty of it is I wanted to be a professional Dota 2 player. And I tried really hard at that. I entered as many tournaments as I could possibly do. I scheduled and brought together a roster, the best players I could find, every qualifier, every amateur tournament, semi-pro tournament. And after trying for a couple years, I realized I'm just not going to make it. I didn't have the ability. I had the passion. I've been playing since 2004. Dota is my favorite all-time game. But when I realized it wasn't going to happen, I thought, I still want to do something in esports. And I thought, what can I bring to the table? And my experience in Dota was as a semi-pro player. I never made it to being a professional player, but I was better than an amateur. And I realized that it's really feast or famine. You're making money, you're qualifying for live events, or you're playing in amateur tournaments that are not really paying you anything. My idea was to create like a stepping stone tournament. I did that, ultimately investing a little over $5,000 worth of my own money into prize pool. I tried to hire moderators, different things, and casters. Well, I couldn't find any casters that were good enough to cast the tournament that I had organized. And that's one of the major things that you have to take care of for live events. Talent is so important. So ultimately, I ended up casting the games myself. I had the game knowledge. I had listened to American football, baseball, and basketball over the years and kind of mimicked those commentators, actually. It was something that I like to do just for fun. So I put those skills together. I ended up casting hundreds of games. Hundreds of hours of Dota ultimately. And I had a great time. I never got sponsors or partners for the league, and it ended up dying. And I thought, now where do I go? The next step would have been contacting Beyond the Summit, maybe trying to join one of these other crews. I didn't have the confidence. I really didn't. I was so nervous to reach out to them. Who am I? I'm not good enough to reach out to them and be a top Dota caster. And my goal was to just create a tournament, and I failed at that. But I got a lot of experience, and I thought, what can I do with this? So I would kind of search around Google. Is there an esports broadcasting job out there? Anybody looking for a commentator? And I came across an ad for a game called Vainglory that was looking for a play-by-play or color caster for their league that was just starting up. I tried out, and sure enough, I ended up getting an opportunity to cast. This is where I got my first live event work sent over to Europe. We were in Katowice, Poland. Katowice, depends how you want to pronounce it, but Katowice. And I got to work with ESL on my very first LAN event. And from there, I honestly never looked back. We ended up doing 3-4 live events every year, major events with Vainglory, and in between we had online seasons and a couple different events. Maybe we'd be at PAX or E3, something like that. And that's ultimately how I gained the majority of my skills since going back to around 2015, essentially. So I found my way in, struggling, trying different things, and ultimately finding a space for myself as talent and as a play-by-play commentator. All right, so that's how I got into esports. That's how I got my first esports work, and that's kind of the journey I took to get there. And I only explain that to you because I think a lot of people are hesitant to jump out and take those first couple steps towards a potential career in an industry that they love, such as esports, because they're just not sure how to get there. And it's important to know there is no one perfect route for you to get to that job. This is a very vast industry with multiple titles, and within each title, there are so many different jobs that can be done. I suggest going and watching the other courses here at Esports University, at least maybe just the intros, to hear from those other instructors about how they found their way into those jobs as well. But shut up, humanists! Quit telling us about your life story. All right, we're here for play-by-play casting, and I want to just stress the importance of this position in esports. With an amazing play-by-play caster, it's going to elevate your broadcast to the next level. I mean, I worked with directors and producers, and you see, like, when they're working with talent that does a great job, it excites them, it excites the crowd, it just kicks it up a notch. We're going to break this course down into multiple categories. We define these as lessons, and I think we have a total of 15 lessons. As we go through, each one is just a major subject that we need to cover. Ultimately, as a play-by-play caster, it all feeds together. And you don't have to be a perfectionist. You're not going to nail all of these things the first time. You're probably not going to nail them for the first year or 2 years that you're doing the job. But if you work on all of these things over time, eventually all of these skills come together, and you are going to be an amazing play-by-play commentator. And also, before we get out of this intro, I just want to let you guys know, I think self-reflection is a major aspect of improvement. So before we get started, as we go along, and even after you've completed this course and you're doing your play-by-play casting, whether it's just for yourself, your friends, or you're getting some work, think about, how am I doing? Am I achieving what I set out to achieve? Am I nailing the energy that I wanted to? Am I giving this tournament the respect that it deserves? Are you really performing in all of the areas and checking every box you need to check to be a great play-by-play commentator? So go ahead and self-reflect right now. Think about, do I have any experience doing this? I mean, maybe you've done theater in high school. That's some experience. Were you a play-by-play commentator? No, but you were in front of a crowd and you learned to project your voice to the back of the room. You learned to control your emotions, or maybe you didn't. Maybe you were awful at theater. But the point is, maybe you've done some things. Maybe you haven't at all. And as we go forward, think back, self-reflect, and I think that's going to help you out a lot. So with that said, that's our intro. Now let's get on to your first lesson. All right, so let's get into this. I want to talk to you about the role of a play-by-play caster, why it's an important job, and some of the basics before we get into the high-level stuff and how you're going to squeeze the most juice out of you, the play-by-play commentator, for your absolute best performance. So kind of basic stuff, but I think a lot of people have this question is, what is a play-by-play commentator? What do they do? Well, a play-by-play commentator is responsible for live action commentary over your esports events. Well, we're talking about esports commentators. Obviously, there's commentators for your live sports. A lot of people in esports don't have that background or experience. Me, myself, I played sports growing up. I watched sports. It's natural for me to kind of tap into the rhythm that I've heard of different casting genres over the years. I mean, I try to bring in a little bit of football, American football, into my casting, whether it's, he's at the 40, the 30, the 20, the 10, or maybe in golf, they kind of soften up and whisper right before he's about to putt. I like to mix up all of those things into esports as well. But it's so important because live action commentary is going on through most of the action. You want to elevate the performance of what's happening without taking over you're not there. You're not the reason that people came to watch, unless you're just like a godcaster of some sort. Most people are there just to watch the tournament, and you're going to elevate that experience, but you're not going to dominate it. You're normally going to be working with what's known as a color caster. Your color caster is going to be there to provide insight, analysis, the high-level details, kind of explain why things are happening as you go along. Oftentimes people will just say, oh, this is my co-caster, But if you're a play-by-play commentator, mostly you're going to have a color caster next to you. And I do use the term commentator or caster interchangeably. It comes from shoutcaster, chop down to caster, and that's generally what people call it. But if you're explaining it to someone that doesn't understand at all, you're going to call it a commentator if you're, I guess, telling your uncle or grandma or something like that. So, to that point, I think it's worth mentioning that there are some folks in the industry that believe that there shouldn't be a play-by-play commentator and a color commentator, that these are one and the same, that you should have two commentators that do both jobs. So if he's talking and the action starts, you just start calling the action. And maybe he'll give us some analysis, and then this guy does the same thing. And it's kind of a very conversational type of broadcast, but sometimes you can get lost not knowing what to expect from each person. So the industry standard pretty much is to have your play-by-plays and your colors. Now, I personally hold the view, and with other respected people that work in the industry that I've had these conversations with, is that really a play-by-play commentator should be able to do soft analysis points. And maybe in the rare case, you actually make some high-level analysis point that your color caster just wasn't thinking of at the time. And your color caster over here on this side should be able to do soft play-by-play. When I say soft play-by-play, I mean, well, if he's talking and there's just some nice last hitting in the lane because you're casting a MOBA, well, he should be able to say, oh, yeah, he got that last hit there. I didn't think he was going to get it, whatever. That's just a soft play-by-play. That's what happened. It's not really an analysis. But if he handed it over to me to cast some last hitting in the lane, that would be awkward. And it would be a waste of the time that he had on the microphone and this kind of hard back and forth. If there's action happening, well, play-by-play has to be calling it. No, it should be a soft bleed between them. And I think one of the things is that with well-established casting pairs, when you're able to cast hundreds of games together, natural synergy like that does develop. But if you, as a solo caster, as a freelancer, are able to work on these skills and know how to, as a play-by-play commentator, to do soft analysis and to give and take with your color caster, it's going to help you a whole lot. So why is this job important? I think it's really easy, especially in competitive play, when you have a desk with usually 3 analysts, sometimes 2 analysts, sometimes 1 if it's a small event, and you have a very experienced color caster with you, there can be a lot of analysis going on. It's actually easy in gameplay, if something interesting happens, to get lost kind of in that moment. And your color caster starts breaking it down. I didn't expect to see this happen, and I had a conversation and I thought this would happen, and oh yeah, and that reminds me of this, but you're focused in on this one aspect. The game's still going on. You have to drive that narrative. Not a storyline, we'll get to storylines later, but that narrative of the live gameplay. You are the voice, you're the narrator. And after that action is happening, you're right there with every fan and viewer, every spectator, unless they don't like you and they've muted the channel. And you're channeling your enthusiasm, but the enthusiasm of all the spectators as well. So to elevate that moment to the next level, you're gonna give it all of the enthusiasm, all of the energy that it deserves. These players have been training usually for years, maybe boot camping for weeks or months to get there. They get to the event that you're currently casting. All of the fans have put in hours. They follow these guys on social media. And when that carry goes in and makes the huge play to steal a major objective or solos 2 people, you gotta pop. You gotta show that energy. And that's what a play-by-play commentator does. It's great if your color caster has energy. I love casting with a color caster that has energy. It takes me to the next level. And sometimes I have to remind myself, if I'm with a color caster that is kind of monotone or very calm, I have to remember to pop in those moments. But is it all hype? No, It's definitely not. There are moments that deserve sadness. It's a somber mood. Maybe someone overcame a major obstacle in their life and they choked. They choked at the major moment when everything was on the line. All the eyes were there. Hundreds of thousands of people were watching, and they choke. You have to be able to channel that. You know what it feels. You have to find a way to bring that into your words. And we'll go through different strategies for kind of eliciting that response as you go on. But I think that shows the importance of a play-by-play commentator. You're channeling the emotions. You're trying to do it in a way that's interesting. You know, it's a little bit of a ride that everybody's taking with you, and you're the captain of the ship. And ultimately, that's why the job of a play-by-play caster is so important. So as a play-by-play commentator, we have to be effective communicators. We have to control our tone, our diction. We have to have relevant, contextually relevant vocabulary. You have to be up to date with the scene. You have to know so many different things, and you have to be able to present that in real time. There is no second take. It's live events, and Lord knows I've screwed up at live events. I think everybody probably has. You got to roll with the punches. We'll talk about that later, but the important thing to realize is that there are all these different aspects that have to come together. And you can work on each one of these skills individually, but eventually the goal is to merge them, okay? So that's what a play-by-play caster does. That's why the job's important. Some basics. And with that, let's go ahead and get on to your next lesson. All right, so let's talk about which games that you're going to be casting. Now, honestly, I think there's probably a few of you that have never even considered the possibility of casting another title than your favorite title. And we're going to get into that in a second here. But the main thing is that you need to cast something that you're passionate about, something that you love, because separating yourself from the crowd, it's going to take some extra effort. And that extra effort is only going to be that much easier if your heart is into it and you're passionate about what you're doing. Now, if you go out, you can, people say fake it till you make it. Yeah, I think that works with some things. And honestly, let's be real. I've cast some games, some events where my heart wasn't into it as much as it was with other events. And you can kind of fake things a little bit, but I think over time, it will become clear to viewers that your heart's not into it. You can't nail everything the way you need to nail it if you're just not excited about what you're doing. Fans, viewers, eventually they're going to notice, and that's going to reflect poorly on yourself. They're going to think maybe this guy's just not that good of a commentator. Well, maybe you are, but you just don't really care as much about what you're doing. Think about that, and think about where you're applying yourself and your time. Because if you're applying your time and yourself effectively and fully, the odds are you're probably going to be making it where you want to go. So say, for example, an underdog team, you're working at an event and you took this because you're looking for work, but you don't really like this game and whatever. Like, you accepted a rate that you're not too happy about. I mean, that happens, right? It happens. But you're at this event and there's an underdog team, and this underdog team is outperforming all expectations. And they make some big play around a major objective in the game that you're casting. And you're like, well, yeah, they made the play. Anybody should have made that play. Well, okay, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe you're actually right to yourself and to some people. But you know what? All of the fans and spectators that followed that team to get there, maybe that player got traded 4 times, and he was never on a team that even had a chance. And they make it to that moment. You need to lay into that moment. Wow, they got it. I can't believe that they actually made this play in the moment. These guys were underdogs. That feels good. Okay? So, yeah, anybody should have made that play versus he got him. You know? It's a big difference, and I think it really shows through in the broadcast. So, one question that I've been asked before from people that wanted to be a caster was, can you cast a game that you're not good at? Well, I think it's a different story for color commentators versus play-by-play commentators. There's that caster-commentator thing going on. Specifically for play-by-play casters, I think you don't have to be good at the game necessarily, to be a play-by-play caster, but assuming that you can control your tone, diction, vocabulary, all in real time, you have those skills, then being better at the game will only serve to make you better as a caster for that game. Now, why is that? So if you know the major strategies of the game and you've executed it and you've played hundreds or thousands of hours of a game, then as you're watching, you can predict what's going to happen next. And I don't mean, color caster, I'm telling my color caster, this is what I predict is going to happen. I mean, sometimes you'll do that. But moreover, prepare yourself mentally for what is about to happen. So you see someone sneaking, you're casting a shooter, and you know that someone's got a great angle from this spot. If they can get there, they might be able to take out 3 people with a sniper shot before they can be taken down. You know that because you played the game. You know that this player is a great sniper, and you know he's almost in position. So your color caster's talking, might not have noticed it, and when he lets off, you're going to mention these 3 things. Player A is in position B with weapon C. And you're preparing yourself for that moment, so when that moment happens, you're ready to go. You're ready to give it that energy. He nails all 3 headshots. You lose your mind, right? And you have the breath to do it. You've taken your breath in before. You've prepared yourself mentally. And that's why knowing the game very well will elevate you as a caster, or especially as a play-by-play caster. Now, can you cast games that you don't know well? Yes, you definitely can. But the important thing is to know the game fully. You may not be great at the game, but just know the game, okay? So you need to know if you're, let's just take Dota as an example. It's kind of a rough example if you're going to come in and cast and not really know it. But you'd want to know the characters, the heroes, right? You want to know as many as possible. What abilities do those heroes have? What items are in the game? What items would this hero be buying? You need to be able to, when a hero or character buys an item that is out of the ordinary, it's your job to point that out. If a major bug happens in the game and you don't notice it because you don't play the game enough to actually know that it was a bug, and all the viewers notice it, that's kind of weird. It's kind of awkward, right? So you're going to lose credibility with your viewing audience. And credibility from the viewing audience is one of the major things that's going to help elevate you up. If people believe that you know what you're talking about and you deliver a great performance, that's what will take you to the next level. So many things to keep in mind. You can work on each one of these aspects individually, but they all add up to a whole, and this is what makes a great play-by-play caster. I know you're going to get there soon enough. Thanks for taking this course. We'll see you later.